students who got expelled for helping a family member during school hours. What happened? I got expelled from Lincoln Preparatory Academy 3 weeks before graduation for leaving campus to help my little sister. Not for fighting, not for drugs, not for cheating on exams. For being a sister when nobody else could be. The zero-tolerance attendance policy at Lincoln Prep stated that any unauthorized absence during school hours resulted in automatic disciplinary action. And accumulating more than 3 unexcused absences in a semester triggered expulsion proceedings regardless of academic standing or extenuating circumstances. I'd read that policy handbook cover to cover freshman year, because my guidance counselor made every scholarship student memorize the rules that could cost us our free education. 4 years of straight A's, perfect behavior, and Model UN awards meant nothing the day I walked off campus without permission to help my sister avoid getting jumped by girls who'd been threatening her for weeks. The administration saw it as defiance of authority. I saw it as choosing family over a rule that didn't account for real-life emergencies. My name is Kira Okafor, and I was 17 years old with college acceptance letters from 3 universities when everything fell apart. Lincoln Prep was one of those prestigious charter schools that pulled high-achieving students from struggling neighborhoods and promised them a path to elite colleges if they followed every rule without question. The trade-off seemed worth it when I started freshman year. Coming from a middle school where metal detectors and police officers were normal parts of daily life. Lincoln had small classes, college prep curriculum, and a track record of sending 90% of graduates to 4-year universities. What they didn't advertise was how rigid their behavioral expectations were, or how quickly they'd throw you out if you became inconvenient. The school operated on a merit-based enrollment system where your spot was never truly secure. And administrators reminded us constantly that hundreds of students would gladly take our place if we couldn't handle the academic and behavioral standards. My little sister Imani was 14 and attended the neighborhood public school 5 blocks from our apartment. She'd wanted to apply to Lincoln Prep too, But our mother couldn't handle the complicated application process while working 2 jobs and managing her worsening anxiety disorder. Imani was smart and funny and way too trusting for her own good, which made her an easy target for the kinds of girls who enjoyed making other people miserable. The problem started in October when Imani accidentally bumped into someone in the cafeteria and made them spill juice on their new shoes. The girl, whose name was Destiny according to Imani, decided this minor accident warranted weeks of harassment and threats. She'd corner Imani in the bathroom to tell her she was going to get beat up after school, or send her friends to shove her in the hallways between classes. Imani tried telling teachers, but they said they couldn't do anything without proof of actual violence. I first learned about the situation when Imani called me crying during my chemistry class in early November. She'd hidden in a bathroom stall because Destiny and 3 other girls were waiting outside the school to jump her, and she was too scared to leave. My phone was on silent during class, so I didn't see the call until lunch period an hour later. By then, Imani had called our mother 6 times, but Mom was working at the nursing home and couldn't leave her shift. I called Imani back from the cafeteria and talked her through sneaking out a side entrance and taking a different route home. And I thought the situation was handled. That evening, Mom said we needed to talk to the school about getting Imani transferred, or getting the other girls suspended for harassment. But when Mom called the next day to set up a meeting, the secretary said the earliest available appointment with a counselor was 3 weeks out. 3 weeks for my sister to keep getting threatened and harassed with no protection. The threats escalated through November, with Destiny posting things on social media about what she was going to do to Imani when she finally caught her. Screenshots showed detailed descriptions of violence, and several of Destiny's friends commented encouraging her and offering to help. Imani saved everything and brought it to her vice principal, who said that social media wasn't under school jurisdiction, and there was nothing they could do about posts made outside school hours. The vice principal suggested Imani just avoid the other girls and not engage with them, as if my 14-year-old sister had any control over when and where she got ambushed in the hallways. The helplessness of watching this happen while administrators did nothing made me furious. I started walking Imani to and from school when my schedule allowed, but Lincoln Prep's hours didn't always line up with her school's dismissal time, and I couldn't be there every day without risking my own attendance record. In early December, Imani called me during my calculus class absolutely hysterical. Through her sobs, I pieced together that Destiny and her friends had cornered her in the locker room after gym class and threatened to beat her up after school that day. They'd taken her phone so she couldn't call for help, and told her they'd be waiting by the front entrance to make sure she couldn't escape. Imani had borrowed another girl's phone to call me, and she was hiding in the nurse's office claiming she felt sick. The school nurse knew something was wrong but couldn't do anything except let Imani stay there until the end of the day. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Mom was unreachable at work until at least 4 o'clock, and Imani's school let out at 2:45. I had 90 minutes to figure out how to get my sister home safely while sitting in calculus class at a school with a zero-tolerance policy for leaving campus. I raised my hand and asked my teacher, Mr. Phillips, if I could go to the office because of a family emergency. He asked what kind of emergency, and I explained my sister was in danger and needed help getting home from school. Mr. Phillips looked sympathetic but said I couldn't leave campus without parent permission and suggested I call my mother to handle it. I explained my mother was at work and couldn't leave, and he said I should talk to my guidance counselor about the situation after class ended. After class would be too late. Imani's school dismissed in less than an hour, and those girls would be waiting for her. I sat through the rest of calculus, unable to focus on derivatives and limits while my mind raced through possible solutions. Every option involved me leaving Lincoln Prep without permission, which meant risking disciplinary action right before college application deadlines. But the alternative was letting my little sister get beaten up because I was too scared to break a rule. When the bell rang, I went straight to the main office and asked to speak with Mrs. Valencia, the dean of students who handled disciplinary issues. The secretary said Mrs. Valencia was in a meeting and couldn't be disturbed. I explained it was urgent and involved my sister's safety, and the secretary said I could wait in the chairs by the window until Mrs. Valencia was available. I sat there for 20 minutes watching the clock tick toward 2:30 while my anxiety climbed higher. Finally, I got up and told the secretary I needed to leave campus to help my sister, and she needed to note it was an emergency situation. The secretary looked alarmed and said I couldn't just leave without authorization, and I said I wasn't asking permission anymore. I walked out the front entrance while she called after me that leaving without permission would result in serious consequences. The subway ride to Imani's school took 18 minutes, and I spent the entire time texting her to stay in the nurse's office until I got there. She was terrified and kept asking if I was really coming, or if she'd have to face those girls alone. I promised her I was on my way, and we'd leave together through a side entrance away from where Destiny and her friends were waiting. When I arrived at Imani's school, I checked in at the security desk and explained I was picking up my sister for a family emergency. The security guard asked if I was on her approved pickup list, and I said yes, even though I wasn't sure. He called down to the nurse's office and confirmed that Imani was there, then gave me a visitor badge and pointed toward the stairs. I found Imani still hiding in the nurse's office, her eyes red from crying and her hands shaking. The nurse looked relieved to see me and said she'd been worried about letting Imani leave with those girls waiting outside. We left through a back exit that opened to the faculty parking lot, avoiding the main entrance where Destiny and her crew were supposedly waiting. Imani held my hand tight the whole walk to the subway station, occasionally looking over her shoulder like she expected them to appear and chase us. On the train ride home, she apologized over and over for getting me in trouble, and I told her there was nothing to apologize for. Family came first, and any school that would punish me for protecting my sister wasn't a place I wanted to be anyway. The words sounded braver than I felt. My phone had 3 missed calls from Lincoln Prep's main office and a text from my guidance counselor saying I needed to return immediately. I didn't respond because I was taking Imani home and making sure she was safe before I dealt with whatever consequences were waiting for me. Mom got home from work around 5 and I explained everything that had happened. She was simultaneously grateful I'd helped Imani and terrified about what Lincoln Prep would do to me for leaving without permission. She called the school immediately and got transferred to Mrs. Valencia's voicemail, where she left a long message explaining the emergency situation and asking them to please understand why I'd had to leave campus. Mrs. Valencia called back an hour later, and I listened to Mom's side of the conversation, getting increasingly upset. After she hung up, Mom said I was being suspended pending a disciplinary hearing scheduled for the following week. The suspension would count as unexcused absences, and combined with my unauthorized departure today, I was already at 4 absences for this semester. One more and I'd trigger automatic expulsion proceedings according to the policy handbook. The next morning, I was supposed to stay home on suspension, but Mrs. Valencia called and said I needed to come in to collect my assignments and meet with the disciplinary committee. Mom took the morning off work to come with me, and we sat in the main office waiting for 30 minutes before getting called into a conference room. Mrs. Valencia was there along with Principal Holloway and my guidance counselor, Ms. Fisher. They had my file spread out on the table showing my perfect attendance record for 3.5 years, my GPA, my extracurricular activities. Principal Holloway started by saying he understood I'd been trying to help my sister, but that leaving campus without authorization was a serious violation that they couldn't overlook regardless of circumstances. He said the zero-tolerance attendance policy existed to maintain order and ensure student safety, and making exceptions would undermine the entire system. My mother tried to explain about Imani being threatened and the school refusing to help, but Principal Holloway cut her off and said that wasn't Lincoln Prep's concern. He said I should have followed proper channels by speaking with a counselor or administrator instead of taking matters into my own hands. I pointed out that I'd tried to see Mrs. Valencia and she was unavailable, and that waiting would have meant my sister getting attacked. Mrs. Valencia said that didn't justify leaving campus, and there were always alternatives if I'd been patient enough to find them. The circular logic made me want to scream. They were saying I should have waited for permission that would never have come in time, and when I'd acted to prevent violence, that made me the problem instead of the girls who'd been terrorizing my sister for weeks. The hearing lasted 40 minutes and ended with them informing me I was suspended for 3 days and would be on behavioral probation for the rest of the school year. Any additional infractions would result in immediate expulsion with no appeal process. They gave me a packet of work to complete during my suspension and said all assignments had to be submitted electronically since I wasn't allowed on campus. Ms. Fisher pulled me aside afterward and said she knew I'd been trying to do the right thing, but the rules were the rules and the administration had no flexibility. She suggested I focus on finishing the year without any more incidents, so I could graduate and move on to college. Her tone was sympathetic but ultimately useless because sympathy didn't change the fact that I was being punished for protecting my sister. During my 3-day suspension, I fell behind in calculus and physics because I couldn't ask questions about the material I didn't understand. My teachers sent work electronically, but learning complex concepts through worksheets without any instruction was nearly impossible.